Hi, I'm Valerie Smith Busby. This documentary was made during the summer of 1994 to commemorate the 60th wedding anniversary of Edith and Howard Smith, our parents.
It is the story of our family covering over 100 years, including our grandparents and great-grandparents. We've used a treasure of old photos dating back to the late 1800s and a collection of memorabilia from all of us right up to the present day.
We hope this family album will come alive for all of you, that it'll give to you and future generations a sense of the people who are our family history. But most of all, we hope this documentary will bring back happy memories for our parents.
Much of this story will be told by our parents through interviews done by Scott Busby in 1985 and in the summer of 1993. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the story of Edith and Howard.
Let's go.
Although one could go back further in time, we will start with the years following the Civil War. The Johnson family had established firm roots in the small but bustling little town of Middlefield, Ohio. They prospered as farmers and storekeepers and were actively involved in politics and public affairs. Joe E. Johnson, the son of Elmira Grant and Madison Johnson, was born there in 1867. He had two sisters, Lena and Carrie, and twin brothers, Hugh and Lou. However, Lou died at the age of 4. His father, Madison Johnson, had served in the Civil War, and it is through the letters of his half-brother, Webster Orlando Johnson, who had served as well, that we discovered a rich resource of what life was like in those days. Webb's letters remain in the family, used by our children in researching that period in history. Joe E. Johnson became a most successful businessman in Middlefield. He founded the Ohio Pail Company in 1895 along with his brother Hugh and developed a growing business which later became the Johnson Rubber Company. He also founded the Middlefield Bank, was a founder and trustee of the Methodist Church, and was a generous and civic-minded member of the community. Joe Johnson married Hattie Lucy Smith on August 30th, 1892. Their only son, Smith, was born in 1894, followed by 2 girls who died at birth. Edith Elmira Johnson, our mother, was born on May 14, 1909. She was a special joy to her parents. Edith was 15 years younger than her brother, whom we knew as Uncle Smith. Edith's maternal grandparents, Reuben Zabino Smith and Harriet Eliza Johnson, had lived next door to her parents. They passed away when Edith was little, so she never really knew them. Edith had a very happy childhood. Her first cousins, Marion and Lou, lived next door, and her other cousins, Aunt Lena's 4 daughters, Leah, Ray, Janet, and Izzy, visited often. There was a large Amish population in Middlefield when Edith was growing up, as there is now, and lifelong Amish friends resulted. The engineering expertise and hard work ethic of the Amish contributed to the success of the Johnson Rubber Company, and recently their handcrafted woodwork can be found in the new Middlefield Bank, a testament to their skills. In 1985, Edith recalled her childhood during a visit to Middlefield, and along with her cousin Leah Morrow Brennan, shared remembrances with her grandson Scott Busby.
I remember that she always grew 4 o'clocks around by the back door, because we never had 4 o'clocks at our house, and I was fascinated with the name and the plant. In fact, they went to bed at night, that late afternoon they were gone. I was asleep. This farm, the barns and the house, were the home farm of Reuben Zabina Smith and Harriet Lucy Smith. My grandparents on my mother's side. They lived here, I think, most of their lives. My mother was born in just a little house down the road, but she lived all her life here. Of course, they didn't have electricity for many, many years. But then my father finally got a plant, which was in the Pail Company, got an electric line somehow, and he ran it across the fields to one of these houses and had one light in the front of the house. And my grandmother didn't want it outdoors because she was afraid the wind would blow it out. She thought it had to be inside somewhere. He wanted to put it outside the house, and she said, oh no, it would blow out. This is the house where I was born, but I must say it's harder to talk about it because it's not a bit the same. It had a rather wide porch on this corner and with wide steps that came down, wooden steps. And I have a picture of me about, maybe 2 years old, sitting on there with a full-skirted dress and a sunbonnet on my head, and squinting, of course. This is the house that my father and mother moved to from the country, which was only probably 2 miles away, but they built this house, and it's only, Scott thinks, perhaps 200 yards down the little street here to the plant, so it was very handy for my father to have his early morning breakfast and walk down to the plant and walk home for lunch. The house itself isn't as terribly big. My brother had a bedroom downstairs filled with radio equipment because he was the first person in town to have any sort of a radio sending and receiving set, and he was very much into that, as well as motorcycles. I was into dolls. I can remember one summer in particular, I decided to have a doll hospital, and the entire porch was given over to 19 sick dolls that needed daily, hourly attention. We had the first car in town that came down that driveway over there, and I one time, probably about 5 years old, let the brakes go and went sailing backwards down that driveway across the road. But I'm sure at that time the road wasn't even paved, and certainly the driveway wasn't paved, so it probably didn't go very fast, and there was no traffic. But this is the house where Uncle Hugh lived. This was Hugh Johnson, married to Viola Donaldson, a brother of my father. We were very close to Hugh Johnson's. Our dining rooms were on the same side of the houses, and we could hear when they were eating and we were eating. Our fathers used to have the most enormous sneezes that you could ever hear, and Marion and I would just get hysterical. Marion and Lou were my cousins who were the children of Hugh. Lou was 3 years older than I, and Marion 2 years younger, but we made a very good threesome. We had a wonderful time. We played dolls a lot, and they had an attic in their house, and we didn't have an attic. And as Elliot knows, attics are very important to houses. Well, this is the Methodist church behind me. It was built in 1900. My father was very involved in getting it started and encouraged other people to give money, and all his life gave quite a lot of money to keep the church going. He was always, I think, pushed by my mother, who was slightly more religious than he. He believed in it, but he, I think, would have rather done some other things on Sunday once in a while. This is where my brother and I went to Sunday school and church, and when I always had to go, no matter how old I was, I had to stay for church. So I sat with my brother, and we would sit toward the front, and he would cartoon the various people in the congregation for me to keep me occupied. So it really wasn't all that bad after all.
Throughout his life, Smith was a wonderful artist, a photographer, and world traveler. He was especially ambitious in those early days in Middlefield. It was his invention of a top for a pail with a rubber gasket that changed the family pail business into the Johnson Rubber Company as the rubber business became more profitable. He also ran the movie theater and traveled cross-country painting signs for a living. In 1923, Smith married Laura Crittenden of Middlefield in a lovely woodland setting. Hattie, Edith's mother, was a rather serious but a loving homemaker. Her salt-rising bread was delicious, although Leah Drennan remembered the cousins really didn't like it. She loved her garden, and her life outside the home revolved around the church and Christian endeavors. One of Edith's recollections was of her first trip abroad with her parents. When she was 16 years old, they took a 53-day cruise around the Mediterranean, visiting the Holy Land and other ports of call. Edith's father died on March 13, 1933, at the age of 66. At his funeral, he was described as the most prominent citizen of Geauga County and a man who practiced the golden rule in all his dealings. Hattie, stalwart and uncomplaining, lived in Middlefield for many years after her husband's death, and then came to live in Pawling, New York, on Tabor Knolls, next to Uncle Smith and Aunt Laura. We remember many nice times together, especially on Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter. She died in 1955 of cancer at the age of 85. Our father's family, the Smiths, also have roots in Middlefield, where our great-grandfather, George Myron Smith, was born in 1862. He was Hattie Smith Johnson's older brother. In 1885, he married Grace Walcott, daughter of Orlo Walcott, a successful banker whose family had emigrated from Connecticut in the early 1800s. They had two children, Howard Walcott and Martha. Martha contracted polio at age 12, but although partially crippled, became a feisty woman with a great sense of humor. GM, as everyone called him, and Grace were regarded as pillars of the community in Warren, Ohio. GM had quite an impressive personal library, and his love of reading has passed down through the generations. He was very successful in real estate and an extensive dealer in bonds and local securities. GM lived to be 85. He died in 1947. His son, our grandfather, Howard Wolcott Smith, was a reporter for the local newspaper at the time he met Mabel Annabelle Adderholt, who was a stenographer in the probate court. Mabel, whom we called Nana, was born in Youngstown, Ohio. The daughter of Alcinous Adderholt and Josephine Shumleffel, her father and two brothers, Will and George, were in the burgeoning railroad business. She was known as the most beautiful girl in Youngstown and had won many awards for her penmanship. Howard and Mabel had a whirlwind courtship and married rather quickly. They had two children. Howard Wolcott Smith Jr., our father, was born on April 19, 1910, in Warren, Ohio. Howard and Edith were actually second cousins and met on a few occasions as children at family gatherings, as you can see here with Aunt Martha. Harriet was born 4 years later. She was a beautiful child. Sadly, she died of diphtheria at the young age of 6. Our father's early years were spent in a house near the home of his grandparents, G.M. and Grace. In 1917, when war broke out in Europe, the family moved to Montgomery, Alabama, where Howard Sr. was stationed. Our father, Howard, began his schooling here. After the war, the family moved to Chicago and then to St. Paul, Minnesota, where Howard Sr. worked for Montgomery Ward, eventually becoming general manager. Howard attended grammar school there. Summer months were spent at the Culver Military Academy in Indiana, where he also distinguished himself academically as well as in boxing, one of his favorite sports. Attending St. Paul Academy was an especially happy time in his life, where he made lifelong friends.
And those were, I would say, in many ways, the happiest 5 years of my life. I loved the school. I loved the friends and people, and it was a small enough school that you felt important in their different activities. And in fact, at Scott's request, I have the yearbook here. They called it the Now and Then. And we were looking over it together, and it's pretty dusty, but I did well to keep it all these years. Reading this refreshes memories that I really never forgotten. And for one thing, I was named to the first all-city team they'd ever picked in St. Paul and Minneapolis. As an end, that football was a different game in those days. 160 or 65-pound ends wouldn't do anything today, and even in those days, I was a little small.
Howard was also captain of the baseball team and was involved in other school activities. At this time, problems had developed in the marriage of his parents, so Howard lived off and on with the Shepherd family.
I would say that was the most important thing that happened to me in St. Paul, was the Shepherd family. They were a very well-known family in St. Paul, very wealthy, and they lived in 476 Summit Avenue, a great big brown house with a butler and chauffeur, that type of stuff. And my father and mother, this goes back, I think I was 17 when they got divorced. Thanks mostly to my father's drinking, and he was running around with the manicures from the athletic club. And somewhere in this, my mother, she either was in the hospital or they'd gone away or something. They put me in a place called the Church Club, which was downtown and was just that. I mean, it was a club that they could, take care of you. Some of my friends from the academy might stay there when the parents went to Florida or somewhere. And I was there, and Mrs. Shepherd heard about it. I'd been to their house, but I can remember her coming with her chauffeur. His name was Sigurd. He was a Norway skier that won an Olympic medal earlier. But she came over and just picked me up, had me pack my clothes and come with them, and I just moved into their house. So I moved in there, and they've kept me for a long time.
The Shepherd's son Roger became one of our father's lifelong friends, and he would eventually name his first son Roger. After graduation from St. Paul Academy in 1929, Howard went off to Yale University, but stayed only 1 year. This was the year the stock market crashed. The country was thrown into a major depression. His parents were estranged, his father's job was in jeopardy, and Yale was not to be. So he took a year off and worked with his grandfather, G.M., in Warren. In the fall of 1930, he enrolled at Ohio Wesleyan, where he was to become reacquainted with Edith, who was already attending. Edith was a member of Alpha Xi Delta sorority, and she roomed all 4 years with her friend and cousin, Marion Johnson. Edith was noted even then for her ability to stand on her head. And Howard observed that she was also an excellent diver. Howard was a member of Phi Kappa Psi fraternity. Many long-term friendships were made at Ohio Wesleyan. There was George Flint and Joy Schuyler, soon to be married, Alice Ward from New London, Ohio, and Eleanor Mumaw, a childhood friend from Middlefield. Edith graduated in 1932. By now, the romance between Edith and Howard was definitely blossoming, but marriage was not even to be considered until Howard's graduation 2 years later. During that 2-year wait, Edith became an accomplished photographer and started her own business in Middlefield. Greatly encouraged by her brother Smith, she was quite successful. In 1933, on a trip to Florida with her parents, she was captured by her own camera, posing with the legendary Yankee baseball great Babe Ruth. who was in spring training at the time. Howard graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Ohio Wesleyan in 1934 and was offered a job with the C.E. Ward Company in New London, Ohio. Rod Ward, a fellow Phi Psi, was a good friend, and with his father, C.E. Ward, hoped to expand their cap and gown business in New England. So Howard's new job took him to Worcester, Mass. That summer. He was so lonely, he soon wrote Edith and convinced her to plan their wedding as soon as possible. Ray Morrow, one of Aunt Lena's daughters, with her fiancé Bill Wining, decided to join Edith and Howard in this venture. Because the waiting period was less, both couples went to Sharon's, Pennsylvania, just across the state border, and were married in a double ceremony by a justice of the peace on August 30th, 1934. The mothers, Aunt Lena and Hattie, were there to celebrate the event, which coincidentally occurred on the same date as Hattie's wedding 42 years earlier. The newlyweds, Edith and Howard, then traveled to New England on their honeymoon.
Well, we loved the trip out. It was a honeymoon, you know. It was an adventure, as I said. Everything was new and different, and I loved the architecture. I'd never seen anything like the houses that are up in northern Massachusetts, where they all go along and are attached down to L's, maybe 2 L's. And it was all very new, and it was great. And Howard had written me and said, I found just the ideal place for us to live. It's with this woman. She's away all day and has a fireplace. Bring the andirons, which is about all we had. And so we got the andiron and got there, and it was a summer cottage. We were married at the end of August, so all we had to look forward to was winter. And the woman was not my type. She worked as a waitress in a spaghetti restaurant and had a Great Dane. Now, the Great Dane I could relate to, but her husband, from whom she was separated, came back just about the time we got there. So he and I were supposed to spend the days alone in the house while Howard went out on business and she went to her restaurant. And besides that, every time you opened the refrigerator, it was just full of cold spaghetti, which she fed the Great Dane. So it was not very good, and I don't think we stayed there more than a week. And then we went out, threw an ad in the paper, and found this attic apartment. Was very happy there for 3 years.
Edith and Howard's first home was in this house on Pleasant Street in Worcester. It lacked the luxury of a kitchen, so dishes were washed in their tiny bathroom sink, which Oscar, their cat, seemed to enjoy as well. Howard's job with the C.E. Ward Company began in earnest, calling on schools and other institutions, selling caps, gowns, and uniforms. Edith joined him on many of his sales trips. Their social life included tennis at the nearby public courts and meeting new friends. Hard to believe, but their new best friends were Ken and Betty Jones and Eileen and Del Doe, thus creating a triumvirate of Doe, Jones, and Smith. I was born on November 18th, 1937. Being that Edith was a photographer, mainly of children, there are, of course, a number of pictures of me. 3 years later, Roger was born on January 13th, 1940. It is now time to move from the small apartment in Worcester to a white colonial home in nearby Boylston.
That was a house with 12 acres, a big house that hadn't had a thing done to it in 50 years. It was just in terrible, terrible shape. We paid $13,000.
No, honey, no.
Oh, no, I'm saying $4,000.
4,000, yeah, 4,200, I
We
think.
did put a lot of money in furnace and stone windows.
It's unbelievable, though, to
But we
buy.
sold it only 6 years later for $13,000, and I just felt so guilty that I was You know, these people were paying $13,000 for this house.
The colonial house, in need of work but very livable, was next to a beautiful white church and across the common from the general store and post office, where Aunt Kate Taylor and Harry Susie lived. Howard's mother, Mabel, forever thereafter known as Nana, moved in with our family. She had been divorced from Howard's father, had a brief marriage to Lee Cross, and needed a family unit once again. She was a wonderful help in Boylston because there were now 2 children, a larger home to care for, and her presence gave Edith the opportunity to occasionally travel with Howard on business trips. Living in Boylston was a wonderful experience for Nana and all the Smiths at this time. We all made new friends with the Morgans, the Balls, and the Bramleys. Our next-door neighbors were the large Boyden family. Our Worcester friends, Judy and Jonathan Doe, visited often. Holidays were very special times for our growing family. Unfortunately, this rather idyllic life would soon change. The war in Europe was accelerating. Unexpectedly, on December 7, 1941, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. Our country now entered the war.
There was not a question in our mind, in my mind anyway, but what Hitler was a murderous, even though we didn't know all about the concentration camps, we knew what an awful person he was. And Pearl Harbor I just went right along with the whole population. Anybody that could do what they did at Pearl Harbor, they needed to be taught a lesson. That war seemed to be for all the right causes.
Howard enlisted in the Navy and was gone for almost 2 years, with Edith and Nana holding down the fort. On occasions during this period, Edith and the children would visit with Hattie, GM, Uncle Smith and Aunt Laura in Middlefield. Howard was promoted to 2nd Lieutenant senior grade and served as a communications officer aboard the USS Difta in the Pacific. In 1945, World War II ended, and the world was once again at peace. (1945) was also the year that Smith Johnson and his college friend Raymond Thornburg decided to establish a rubber company in the Northeast. Pinky Thornburg lived in Pauling, and together they felt the town would be a good site for the new company. They were greatly encouraged by Lowell Thomas, also a Pauling resident, who invested in the new venture. And so the Pauling Rubber Company was established. When Howard returned home from the war, he was offered and accepted a position with the new company as vice president and general manager. In the summer of '46, as we were relocating the family to Pauling, Edith remained in Worcester to give birth to Stephen Johnson Smith. He was born on June 16, 1946. A few weeks later, Edith and baby Stephen joined us in Pauling. Our new family home was purchased for $7,000. It had originally been the manse for Christ Church, which occupied this site from 1881 until 1936. That year, Lowell Thomas paid for the church to be moved to its present site on Quaker Hill so he could have a pew with a better view. The old manse remained and was badly in need of renovation, so workmen were very much a part of our lives for the first few years. As children, we attended this one-room schoolhouse just up the road from our home.
Oh, I thought it was delightful. And I think the children learned a lot that was way over their heads when they were right in the same room with these others. And And I think the kids liked it.
The family made new friends easily on Quaker Hill. In the summer, our activities were centered around Quaker Lake. We recall Dad being particularly upset with our going to the lake in his new car, with wet towels and sandy shoes. So to solve the problem, he bought Mother this stylish 1929 Whippet to transport us to the lake and back. Everyone gathered for swim meets and picnics at the lake as they do today. In 1948, Pauling, New York gained national attention. Thomas E. Dewey, then governor of New York, lived here. He was running for President of the United States. The simple but active lifestyle of our town, as well as many famous residents such as Lowell Thomas, Edward R. Murrow, noted visitors Gene Sarazen and Sam Snead, were featured in national magazines. Our family were neighbors of the Deweys and their children. And so we were very excited about the prospect that our town would become the location for the summer White House. The night of the election, the Chicago Tribune announced that Dewey had won, and we all went to bed confident of our friend and neighbor's success. We woke up the next morning to the devastating news that, in fact, Harry S. Truman had won by a very close margin. In that same year, Richard Nixon, then a young senator campaigning for Dewey, visited our church. My mother snapped this photo as he was autographing a book of children's stories for 9-year-old Betty Larson. For years, Betty tried unsuccessfully to locate the photo she knew had been taken. Years later, Edith was told the story, and today, the long-sought photo has found its home. The Quaker Hill Country Club was a center of activity for our family and friends. In the 50s, our movie camera captured other activities as we were growing up. In 1953, I went to St. Margaret's School in Waterbury, Connecticut, graduating in 1955.
That worked out fine. I was miserable for the first couple weeks. I just was so used to having her around, and I think probably all mothers go through that with daughters. I wasn't here, except in body. I was over in St. Margaret's, thinking, now, what class is she in at this time of day?
Following graduation, I attended Ohio Wesleyan, the family alma mater. Howard and Edith enjoyed visiting me there. Bob Bob Busby entered my life on July 4th, 1956, and we were married on September 22nd, 1957 at Riverside Chapel. Jess Lyons, Edith and Howard's close friend from college, now a minister, proudly officiated. In 1957, Roger went to the Hotchkiss School. The entire family was there when he graduated in 1958. He went on to Williams College, graduating in 1962. He then got his MBA at Columbia Business School. Roger discovered the beautiful Betty Larson, who had spent summers in Pauling for years, and they were married on October 9, 1965. Stephen had finished his high school years in Pauling in 1964. He went on to St. Lawrence University and graduated in 1968. By this time, the family was growing, and Edith and Howard had achieved the status of proud grandparents. The Busby family now included Scott, who was born in 1959. Susan came along in 1960. Stephanie was born in 1961. Andrea, our Andy, came along in 1963. And 6 years later, in 1969, Craig was born. Roger and Betty's first child, Stacy, was born in 1968. Todd came along 2 years later in 1970. Jason was born in 1973. Stephen had met the vivacious Kathy Gould in 1970, and they were married on June 19, 1971 in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. Their wedding was quite a family occasion, with Stephanie as flower girl. The Smith and Busby families, babies and all, were there to celebrate the occasion. Kathy and Stephen now have 3 children. Stephen Jr. was born in 1972, and due to his inherited energy level was nicknamed Steamer. Elliot came along in 1976. Eliza, the youngest of all the grandchildren, was born in 1980. It wasn't long after Eliza was born, about 2.5 years, that Susan Busby and Dave Daniels were married in 1982. Eliza wore Edith's baby dress for the occasion. The size of the family really increased soon after, when Edith and Howard's great-grandchildren began to arrive. Matthew was born in 1983. Megan came along in 1986. The great-grandchildren took a big leap in 1991 when Cara Fain, Erin Valerie, and Emma Edith were born to Susan and Dave. Looking back and trying to cover all the years and experiences of Edith and Howard and this now large family is quite an awesome task. Much like a patchwork quilt, the life of Edith and Howard together is made up of all kinds of wonderful experiences. Observing special occasions, such as birthdays and anniversaries, is a tradition in our family, such as Grandmother's 70th birthday at Mohonk. Elliot wanted to know if the old hotel had an attic. Steve's 40th birthday celebration in Bedford was great fun. Eliza was so impressed with the Snoopy birthday card that she showed it to both grandfathers. Edith's 80th birthday was celebrated at the Busbys after church and featured the now infamous turkey and spinach salad. Howard's 80th birthday was held in Florida. All of us flew in and surprised Edith and Howard on the first tee, with a grand dinner later on. One of the best parties ever was the 50th wedding anniversary on Edith and Howard's side lawn, actually where the church originally stood.
Walking down Welfare Way, anyone else but me, anyone else but me, anyone else but me. I'm young, I'm so afraid that the country day underneath those mountain signs still fade away in the mountain's rain. Start getting your eyes slow. Don't sit on the apple tree with anyone else but me. Till I'm marching on the mountain.
Edith and Howard have gone to more graduations and heard more commencement speeches than most grandparents. Their interest and support is noteworthy. Howard's memories of selling caps and gowns come quickly back. He seems compelled to check to see if C.E. Ward is the manufacturer. Edith and Howard's married life together has always included pets, beginning with Oscar. Since then, there have been cats and dogs of all sizes and colors. Only Thor, the Great Dane, had to be relocated as a companion to Miss Fairbanks at St. Margaret's School. At present, McGregor, named for our late Scottish golf pro, and E.T., which stands for extra toes, now reside with them whether it's in Florida or at home in Pauling. Friends, and more friends are remembered down through the years. Some were the ministers at the churches Edith and Howard attended, including, of course, Dr. Lankler and the Powells. The Brunstings, now settled in Florida, have left a lasting impression on all of our lives. The presence of Ruth and Norman Peale has been an inspiration to all of us. These friends and many more bring back wonderful and enduring memories. Edith and Howard's yearly Christmas cards and later Valentine cards have been a tradition. They've become a diary of information of family news and activities. All of us have continued that tradition of picture cards, and each year our friends are bombarded with more news than anyone would wish to know about our families. Such are traditions. Covering all the golf in the life of Edith and Howard is hardly possible. They both started playing seriously when they moved to Quaker Hill, and golf trips to faraway places included the family and their friends. Golf pros, just like ministers, have always been some of Edith and Howard's best friends. Howard and grandson Scott, and later Craig, had great success in prestigious tournaments in Massachusetts. Of course, their friendly games provided lots to chat about, like the short putt that was missed or made. Edith and Howard have always loved traveling. Their first trip to Europe was in 1959, and successive trips followed with French classes at home in between to improve their skills. Wonderful friendships were formed with the Bensassans and the Ozans, and Dominique and Jean-Louis Moret, known as the wrong Jean-Louis. He was mistakenly picked up at the airport in 1965 and definitely was preferred over the real Jean-Louis. Jean-Louis took this picture of all of us toasting the birth of Stacy Smith during the 1968 Olympics in Grenoble. In 1987, we journeyed to the Cotswolds in Scotland for golf and sightseeing. Howard got into the local spirit by buying a new outfit. He practiced his chip shots in the side yard there, just like he does at home. New trips and adventures are always in the works. All of the wonderful things that have happened in our family would probably not have been possible if it weren't for the success of the Pauling Corporation. Through the vision and hard work of Edith and Howard, our whole family, and ingenious friends, the company has stayed afloat through hard economic times. Diversification is one of the secrets of the company's success, which is why the name was shortened in 1986. The business involves much more than rubber these days. Howard was president for 25 years before retiring, and then Roger became president. Over the years, the directors have mixed business and pleasure, and Edith and Howard remain very much involved in important company policy decisions. The 50th anniversary of the company will be celebrated in 1995. Over the years, one of Edith's special joys has been her garden. Today, there is so much more to look forward to. More talks with Scott at the lake, Stacy's wedding right around the corner, more of grandmother's cookies for the little girls, another boxing lesson for Matthew, more visits to the library with Emma Edith, another winter season in Sarasota, and great anticipation of the 1995 blooming of the Edith Johnson Smith daylily. So, Mom and Dad, Grandmother and Grandfather, your love for each other and for your family has enriched our lives and has given us a wonderful example for generations of our family to follow.
I can't remember when you weren't there, when I didn't care for anyone but you. I swear we've been through everything there is. Can't imagine anything we've missed. Can't imagine anything the two of us can't do. Through the years, you've never let me down. You've turned my life around. The sweetest days I've found with you. Through the years, I've never been afraid. I've loved the life we've made, and I'm so glad I stayed right here with you through the years. I can't remember what I used to do, who I trusted, who I listened to before. I swear you've taught me everything I know. Can't imagine needing someone so. But through the years it seems to me I need you more and more. Through the years, through all the good and bad, I know how much we had. I've always been so glad to be with you. Through the years, it's better every day. You've kissed my tears away, as long as it's over. with you through the years. Through the years when everything went wrong, together we were strong. I know